A movie about incompetent, irresponsible, academically disqualified college students was made for $3 million and returned $140 million at the box office. It became the second highest grossing film of 1978, trailing only Grease. It launched the careers of at least 6 actors who would go on to become genuine stars. And the most famous actor in it, the man whose face was on every poster, whose name sold the picture, cost the studio essentially nothing to hire because he had no idea his television show was making him famous. National Lampoon's Animal House was not supposed to be what it became. It was a low-budget comedy about fraternity life that Universal Pictures greenlighted without significant expectations, set on a campus that had already been turned down by dozens of universities, shot in 28 days by a first-time feature director, with a cast of mostly unknown actors and one television performer who was convinced the project was going nowhere. He was wrong. They all were. And what happened after the film opened in July 1978 changed the course of American comedy cinema in ways that are still visible today. 15 facts, spanning the film, its cast, its cultural aftermath, and the strange lives of the people who made it. One of these facts involves a musician who became a character forever. Another involves an actor who lost out on millions by trusting his own judgment. And the one we close on is about what this film was actually doing when it looked like it was doing nothing serious at all. Let's count it down. 15. Every major studio passed on it. Before Universal Pictures said yes to Animal House, the project had been rejected by every other major studio in Hollywood. The screenplay, written by Harold Ramis, Doug Kenney, and Chris Miller, was based on autobiographical material the 3 writers had published in National Lampoon magazine. Miller's stories drew from his time in the Alpha Delta Phi fraternity at Dartmouth in the early 1960s. Ramis brought in material from his own fraternity experience at Washington University in St. Louis. The National Lampoon's humor magazine had already demonstrated that there was a substantial audience for this kind of dark, irreverent comedy about American collegiate life. It didn't matter. The studios that passed did so on the basis of the script alone. The content was considered too crude, too lowbrow, too committed to a style of humor that was going to limit its commercial reach. The specific combination of fraternity antics, crude physical comedy, and sharp satirical edges directed at authority figures didn't fit neatly into what studios believed they understood about what audiences would pay to see. Universal was the last real option. They greenlit it, but without enthusiasm. The budget they authorized was low enough that the production had to make specific choices at every stage about where to spend money and where to cut. The cast would be largely unknown actors supplemented by one name, John Belushi, who was gaining recognition on Saturday Night Live, but had not yet proven that his television fame would translate to movie tickets. Every major studio was wrong about Animal House. They got the evidence of being wrong by watching it become the second highest grossing film of 1978 from the outside. 14. Dozens of universities refused to let the film shoot on campus. The production team knew that Animal House had to be filmed on a real college campus, not a studio lot dressed to look like a university, an actual institution of higher learning with real dormitories and real quads and the specific physical texture of American collegiate life that couldn't be faked convincingly on a backlot. They sent the script to American universities and started asking for permission. The rejections came back quickly and consistently. The University of Missouri passed. So did a significant number of other institutions whose names have been variously mentioned across accounts of the production. The reasoning at each school was essentially the same. The script depicted college life in a way that the administrations were not prepared to formally associate their institution with. Toga parties, academic fraud, alcohol, and a faculty member who invited students to his home for marijuana were not elements that university PR departments wanted photographed against their landmark buildings. The production eventually found its campus at the University of Oregon in Eugene. The agreement came with 2 conditions. Oregon would be paid $20,000 for the use of its facilities, and the University of Oregon itself would not be named in the film. Faber College became the fictional institution, a name that allowed Oregon to have the income without the association. 2 real fraternity houses in Eugene served as the houses used for filming. 200 local residents were hired as extras. The university got $20,000 and a fictional replacement name. The universities that said no watched Animal House become a cultural touchstone shot on a competitor's campus. Sometimes the schools that take the risk are the ones people remember. 13. John Belushi was commuting to New York every week. By the time Animal House went into production in fall 1977, John Belushi was not simply a rising star, he was one of the most talked about performers in America. Saturday Night Live was in its third season. Belushi's characters, the samurai, the killer bee, the Greek diner owner, had made him a genuine cultural phenomenon. His face was recognizable, his name was drawing attention, and yet he was being paid to be in a low-budget comedy that Universal had green-lighted reluctantly, playing a character named Bluto Blutarsky, whose primary characteristic was an appetite for food, chaos, and alcohol. The production schedule accommodated Belushi's SNL commitment in the most logistically demanding way possible. He was on the Oregon set for 3 days each week, then flew back to New York for the Saturday Night Live rehearsal and broadcast, then flew back to Oregon for the next 3 days. This arrangement continued for the film's 28-day shoot, which meant Belushi was essentially working 2 full-time jobs simultaneously, separated by a cross-country flight, every single week. The cafeteria scene, one of the most iconic sequences in the film, where Bluto piles an absurd quantity of food onto his tray and then performs what became known as the "I'm a zit" gag, was completely improvised. Director John Landis saw what Belushi was doing when he started piling food, told the camera operator to stay with him, and let it run. The reaction from the surrounding cast was entirely genuine. Nobody told them this was coming. That moment was not in the script. It was in Belushi, and it became one of the most quoted physical comedy sequences of the decade. 12. Donald Sutherland made the most expensive decision of his career.
Now, was Milton trying to tell us that being bad was more fun than being good?
Donald Sutherland was the biggest name attached to Animal House when filming began. He had been in MASH, Clute, and Don't Look Now. He was a genuine film star at a level that Belushi had not yet reached. His role, Professor Dave Jennings, the casually countercultural English teacher who invites students to his home and plays guitar, was small. He was on set for only 3 days. When it came time to negotiate his payment, Sutherland was offered a choice. He could take a percentage of the film's gross receipts, a back-end deal that would pay him more if the film performed well, or he could take a flat fee of $75,000 for his 3 days of work. Sutherland looked at the script. He looked at the cast. He considered the budget and the overall profile of the production. He took the flat fee. The film grossed $140 million in domestic theatrical release alone. A percentage deal of any reasonable size would have been worth several $1,000,000 at minimum. Sutherland received $75,000 and walked away from the rest. He later said he had been so convinced the film was going to fail that the flat fee had seemed like the safe choice. By multiple accounts, he has described his work on Animal House as one of the funniest and most enjoyable experiences he had on any set in his career, and as one of the most expensive decisions his agent ever let him make. The man who was most certain Animal House would fail ended up loving it more than almost anyone else. That says something about the specific uselessness of certainty in the film business. 11. Kevin Bacon was in his first ever film.
Comedy, halt!
Animal House marked the feature film debut of Kevin Bacon. He played a minor role, a fraternity pledge named Chip Diller, who appears most memorably in the parade sequence near the film's conclusion, calling for calm while everything descends into chaos around him. It was not a substantial role. He has approximately one significant line. Bacon was 20 years old. He had been performing in theater in New York and had no film credits whatsoever. The casting of Animal House drew from a broad net. The production was looking for young talent across multiple cities, and Bacon was among the people who came in and earned a small part in what would become one of the most significant comedy films of the era. The specific fame that later attached to Bacon's name, the parlor game of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, connecting every actor in Hollywood through their shared credits, relies on the idea that Bacon has appeared in so many films across so many genres that he serves as a universal connection point. That particular game would not have been possible without the career that began with Animal House's parade scene. One minor role, one call for calm in the middle of a riot, the beginning of one of the most connected film careers in American cinema. If this is the kind of deep dive into real film history you've been looking for, subscribe. We do this every week, and there's a lot more ahead. 10. The toga party became a real cultural phenomenon. Animal House premiered in July 1978. By September, college campuses across America were hosting toga parties. This was not a pre-existing tradition that the film depicted. It was something that emerged from the film and then replicated itself in reality at a scale that genuinely startled the people who had made the movie. The toga party sequence in Animal House was not heavily planned or elaborately produced. The logistics of dressing a large number of extras in bedsheet togas on a modest budget were, if anything, one of the cheaper solutions available for staging a large party scene. The sequence worked because of its energy rather than its production value. The chaos of it, the specific madness of a room full of people who had simply decided to do this, and then the audiences watched it and went home and organized their own versions. Toga parties became a specific category of college social event with a name, a format, and a set of conventions that all derived directly from a single scene in a Universal Pictures comedy from 1978. The film created a cultural institution, not by depicting something that existed, by inventing something that then started existing in reality after the film showed it to people who hadn't thought of it yet. This is a relatively rare thing. Films usually reflect culture. Animal House actually generated it, at least in this specific instance. The toga party scene is one of the cleaner examples in popular culture history of a fictional moment producing a real-world behavior that then became a tradition. 9. The musician who became a character forever. This is the entry that contains one of the stranger identity decisions in the history of American entertainment. Dwayne Jesse was a Portland blues musician who was cast as Otis Day, the charismatic band leader of Otis Day and the Knights, performing at the Delta House Toga Party and later at the Dexter Lake Club in one of the film's most memorable sequences. Jesse brought an energy and musicality to the role that made Otis Day one of the most distinctive presences in the film, despite relatively limited screen time. And then the film came out, and the audience responded to Otis Day with enthusiasm that exceeded what anyone involved had anticipated. The character became beloved. The performance, specifically Jesse's specific charisma and musical authenticity, was cited as a highlight of the film by viewers who wanted more. Dwayne Jesse subsequently legally changed his name to Otis Day. He then formed a real touring band called Otis Day and the Knights, the fictional band from the film, now with real bookings, real venues, and real fans who came specifically because of their connection to the movie. The band toured extensively for years. Otis Day and the Knights, the real version of the fictional version of a band, performed at events whose entire appeal was rooted in the Animal House connection. A performer adopted his fictional character's identity and then turned that identity into a real career. The boundary between what was real and what was created for the film collapsed entirely and permanently. 8. John Landis was 27 years old. John Landis was 27 years old when he directed National Lampoon's Animal House. It was his first major studio feature. His previous directing credit was a very low-budget film called Schlock, which had received limited distribution and almost no cultural impact. He had not demonstrated by any conventional measure that he was ready to helm a production of this scale and complexity. He was chosen partly because of his obvious enthusiasm for the material, and partly because, at his level of experience and at the budget Universal was offering, the pool of directors willing and available was not large. More established directors expected more money and more control than the production could provide. What Landis brought was a specific directorial instinct that matched what the film needed. He encouraged the cast to push further than the script, created conditions in which improvisation was welcome, and made deliberate creative choices, like encouraging rivalry between the actors playing the deltas and the omegas, that produced energy on screen that pure technical competence couldn't have manufactured. His instruction to the camera operator to stay with Belushi during the cafeteria scene, rather than cutting away when the action went off script, is the kind of instinct that defines a certain kind of director, one who trusts what's happening in front of the camera over what was planned on paper. Landis went on to direct The Blues Brothers in 1980, Trading Places in 1983, Coming to America in 1988, and a career that included An American Werewolf in London, one of the most celebrated horror comedies ever made. It started with a 27-year-old and a $30 million comedy about a fraternity in trouble. 7. The script was written by people who had lived it. Most Hollywood movies have writers who research their subjects from the outside. Animal House was written from the inside. Chris Miller had been a member of the Alpha Delta Phi fraternity at Dartmouth College in the early 1960s. The stories he had published in National Lampoon, the ones that served as the direct source material for the film, were autobiographical in the way that comedy often is. Exaggerated, rearranged, given better punchlines than the originals, but rooted in things that had actually happened to real people in a real fraternity house. Harold Ramis contributed material from his own fraternity experience at Washington University in St. Louis. Producer Ivan Reitman had his own collegiate memories from McMaster University in Ontario. The specific texture of Delta House, the specific hierarchy, the specific relationship between the fraternity's chaos and its genuine solidarity, the specific way that authority figures became the enemy, came from memory rather than imagination. Doug Kenney, who co-wrote the screenplay and whose own story is one of the most poignant in the film's history, had a different source. He brought the darkness. Kenney was funnier than almost anyone around him, and more tortured than he let most people see. The comedy he brought to the script had an edge that came from a genuinely complicated inner life, one that would eventually defeat him. After the film had become a success, he couldn't fully hold. The writing was autobiographical enough to be true, and crafted enough to be art. That combination doesn't happen often. When it does, audiences recognize it, even if they can't articulate why. 6. The Bluto role was written specifically for Belushi. Harold Ramis knew John Belushi from Second City and Saturday Night Live. He knew exactly what Belushi could do. The specific brand of physical comedy, the volcanic energy, the particular way Belushi inhabited a character completely and without apparent self-consciousness. When writing Bluto Blutarsky, Ramis wrote for that specific quality rather than for a generic character that any actor could inhabit. The role of Bluto is, on the page, surprisingly thin. He has relatively little dialogue compared to the ensemble. He functions more as a force of nature than a conventional character, a recurring presence whose impact is always physical and whose motivations are essentially elemental. He eats, he drinks, he watches, he periodically erupts into decisive action. He delivers one genuine speech, the "nothing is over until we decide it is" motivational moment near the film's conclusion. And that speech lands with such unexpected weight that it briefly transforms the entire film's emotional register. Belushi understood what Bluto required, not performance, in the technical sense, but presence. The willingness to be completely committed to the character's specific appetites without any visible layer of actorly self-awareness getting between the audience and what they were watching. That commitment, absolute, unguarded, entirely unself-conscious, is what made Bluto iconic. Ramis knew Belushi could deliver it because he had watched him do it in other contexts. He wrote the role for the person, not the archetype. 5. The film launched the National Lampoon film franchise and created its template. Animal House was the first film produced in association with the National Lampoon brand. The success of the film at the box office, $140 million against a $3 million budget, a return ratio that remains one of the most impressive in comedy film history, established a formula that the brand then attempted to replicate across subsequent years. National Lampoon's Vacation followed in 1983, written by John Hughes and directed by Harold Ramis. It starred Chevy Chase and became its own franchise, spawning 4 sequels. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989 is, by most measurements, the most watched Christmas comedy in American history, airing on cable television every holiday season to audiences that have seen it dozens of times. The National Lampoon brand continued producing films of diminishing quality and commercial relevance through the 1990s and 2000s. But Animal House was the originating event. It established that a National Lampoon production could take a relatively modest investment and return an extraordinary multiple on it, and that the specific brand of dark, irreverent, authority-challenging comedy the magazine had developed for print could translate directly and powerfully to film. The formula was simple and apparently easy to replicate, which is why so many subsequent productions tried. What they consistently missed was that the formula's apparent simplicity concealed a genuine craft. The characters in Animal House were more precisely drawn, the structure was tighter, and the emotional grounding underneath the comedy was more real than it needed to be for a pure party movie. Replication without craft produced diminishing returns, but the original remained. 4. The man who wrote it never got to see how much it meant. Doug Kenney was one of the 3 writers of Animal House. He was also the co-founder of National Lampoon magazine, and, by the accounts of everyone who worked with him, one of the most gifted comic minds of his generation. Someone who could find the specific, devastating joke inside any situation and deliver it with a precision that was genuinely different from anyone else working in American comedy at the time. He was also privately struggling in ways that his public persona, funny, successful, celebrated, concealed almost completely from most people around him. When Animal House opened to enormous commercial success in 1978, Kenney was not able to fully receive it. The gap between what the outside world was telling him about his achievement and what he experienced on the inside was real and persistent. He struggled with substance use, with the pressure of following an enormous hit, with the specific burden of being told you are brilliant by an industry that is also constantly waiting to see what you do next. He died in August 1980 at 33, falling from a cliff in Hawaii. Caddyshack was still in theaters. He never saw what Animal House became. The thing he built lasted. He didn't. 3. Otis Day and the Knights became a real band that toured for years. We touched on Dwayne Jesse's decision to legally change his name in Entry 9, but the full story of what happened after Animal House with the Otis Day identity deserves its own entry because it is genuinely one of the more unusual cultural after-effects of a single film performance in American entertainment history. After the film opened, the demand for performances by Otis Day and the Knights, the fictional band from a fictional toga party in a fictional fraternity house, was real and substantial. People who had loved the film, who had left theaters humming Shout and Shamalama Ding Dong, wanted to see the band they had watched perform on screen. The fact that the band had been assembled for a movie and didn't otherwise exist was, in the logic of the audience's desire, an irrelevant detail. Jesse saw this and understood what it meant. He assembled an actual touring band, legally secured the right to use the name, and began performing at college campuses, fraternity events, and venues across the country as Otis Day and the Knights. The set lists naturally included the songs from the film. The audience at every show knew exactly who they were coming to see and why. The band toured actively for years after the film's release. Jesse continued performing under the Otis Day identity for decades. The character that was written for a 3-minute party scene became a professional identity that supported a real career in music. It is, in the truest sense of the phrase, life imitating art, except that in this case, the art came first and generated the life that followed it. 2. The film launched. 6 major careers. Simultaneously, Animal House is one of the most productive single casting decisions in the history of Hollywood. Not because any one of its cast members became a global superstar from this film alone, but because of how many careers it set in motion simultaneously. Kevin Bacon's film debut, Karen Allen, who appeared as Katie, would go on to star in Raiders of the Lost Ark opposite Harrison Ford in 1981. Tim Matheson, who played the smooth-talking Otter, had already voiced Johnny Quest as a teenager and went on to a long career in film and television. Peter Riegert, who played Boone, became a respected character actor with decades of significant roles. Tom Hulce, who played Pinto, would be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor for Amadeus in 1985. Bruce McGill, who played D-Day, built a career as one of American film's most reliable character actors across 30-plus years. None of these careers were launched by a single film alone. But Animal House was the common starting point, the moment that put most of these performers in front of film audiences at scale for the first time. The casting director assembled a group of young unknowns, gave them a framework and a director willing to let them work, and 6 of them went on to careers that in aggregate represent hundreds of films and decades of American cinema. That density of future talent in one low-budget 1978 comedy is genuinely unusual. John Landis put together, essentially by accident, one of the most productive single casts in Hollywood history. 1. What Animal House was actually about. And here is the thing that gets lost in 45 years of toga parties and food fight imitations, and nothing is over until we decide it is quotations. Animal House was set in 1962. It was made in 1977. The gap between those two dates is not incidental. It's the entire meaning of the film's framing. By 1977, the generation that had been in college in 1962 had lived through the rest of the 1960s. They had been drafted and had protested drafts. They had watched the country they believed in reveal its capacity for specific, systematic dishonesty. In Vietnam, in Watergate, in the official narratives that had unwound under examination. The specific institutional authority that Dean Vernon Wormer represented in the film, pompous, corrupt, self-serving, protected by the machinery of its own establishment, had been exposed in the real world that the film's audience had lived through as exactly what the Delta House knew it to be. The Deltas were not simply rowdy underachievers. They were people who had correctly assessed the character of the institution, claiming authority over them, and had decided with perfect accuracy that its claim to moral superiority was fraudulent. Wormer's threat, "Your ass is mine," was the language of institutional power at its most nakedly coercive. The Delta's response was the only honest one: chaos, specifically directed at the people who deserved it. The film was set in 1962 because 1962 was before everything. It was the last moment before the country's official story about itself was comprehensively tested and found wanting. The audience watching in 1978 understood this at a level the film never had to state directly. The comedy worked because it was true. The anarchism was appealing because the alternative, the Omegas, Wormer, the administration's idea of what a college student should be, was not just unappealing, but actively, demonstrably dishonest. Animal House made $140 million because it told people something true, using food fights and toga parties as the vehicle, at a historical moment when the truth had very few other available formats. 15 facts, 1 film, and a question worth settling. Is Animal House fundamentally about freedom, fundamentally about immaturity, or is there genuinely something more serious underneath the chaos? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe for more of this. We'll be back next week.